the more we try to socialize anything, the more we will destroy its beauty. And the more we try to subsidize things, the more we will destroy its resilience. And so farming has been so subsidized and so socialized that we're destroying it. And we should take that as a canary in the coal mine.
Welcome and thank you for being with us. I'm Zara Sethna, and this is Collapse Life. Before we get into this conversation, please take a moment to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much. As more people come to recognize that the systems we rely on are brittle and overextended, questions are arising. When things change, how do we adapt? And what does real resilience look like? Our guest today isn't here because she claims to have all the answers, but she has lived the consequences. Before becoming a regenerative farmer, Mollie Engelhart built successful restaurants, lived inside modern convenience, and believed, as many people still do, that good intentions, smart systems, and the right choices were enough. Now she directly depends on land, weather, animals, and seasons for her livelihood and her family's survival. And that shift has changed how she sees everything. Mollie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. We have so much to talk about, and I know that you have very little time, so we're going to jump right in. And just as I mentioned, you lived a very successful life inside modern systems. So tell us a little bit, was there a moment when you realized that that world that you were living in was sort of buffered from reality?
I mean, my break, like as far as my mental, like what broke me open, and then, to realize everything that came from that was really like when I grew up on a farm, but when I began farming again as an adult, I owned vegan restaurants. I had 5 restaurants, 350 employees, and I was able, to manage all that and run all that. And I thought I'm saving the planet and da 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 da. And I started growing food because I wanted to have the highest quality food for my customers, and I wanted to bring the food waste out of the restaurant, bring it back to the farm, and keep that food in the loop. I just realized there was no vegan food. It didn't exist. It's not a thing. We can choose not to eat vegan. We can choose not to eat meat on our plate, but there's no less death. Like your avocado toast has 100,000 ground squirrels attached to it that are dead, and your everything, your broccoli's grown with blood meal and bone meal and feather meal that came out of the consolidated feedlot system, and that there is life and death in every. To be alive is to be on the backs of death. And I realized that, and I just realized, wow, we are so disconnected from
Mm.
everything, from reality of any kind. And that's was the beginning of the fracture in my mental, like, oh, to see everything differently. And that's why my book is called Debunked by Nature, because by farming and by being in nature, I became acutely aware that everything that we're being programmed to believe inside of these systems is not true, and it doesn't exist in nature. And so it's really, really obvious if you try to take the construct of race and put it into nature, like no animals care what color other animals are. That's like a strictly human thing. Uh, Poisoning your own water and your own food, for sure, a strictly human thing. All other mammals prioritize water and food, and then reproduction and shelter. And we're just like shelter, shelter, comfort, comfort. And we've abandoned reproduction, water, and food of any real um, cleanness. And so those are just a few of the examples. So I just realized that everything that the system that we've been built in around us, and we are existing inside of us, lets us believe these ideas that aren't rooted in God's design or nature's design in any way, shape, or form. And you can only believe it when your food shows up on a shelf in a grocery store. And you can only believe it when you are many steps away from the land.
It's interesting that you grew up on a farm as well, and now you're raising your children on a farm. What differences have you felt being an adult on a farm and being kind of responsible for the land and the animals and being dependent on the weather and the seasons versus being a child on the farm?
Well, I mean, being a child on a farm is just the best ever. My kids are right now. I hope that we get 3 inches of ice this weekend. And I'm like, I hope we do not get 3 inches of ice this weekend on the farm. So, the kids, it's just all fun, it's just all adventure, and that's how it was for me and my brother too. We were building forts and picking cherries and climbing peach trees and climbing apple trees, and just like best life ever. And the responsibility of the farm is so heavy, especially inside of the money slave system that exists, because really growing our own food, managing our water, managing our environment should be all that we need to do. But because of the system, you can't just do that. You have to pay into the system. There's property taxes, and there's this, and there's this cell phone and internet, and then trash. And there's all this system that we have to be paying into. So then it forces this kind of duality of what you should be doing and then what you have to be doing, and then how do you extract yourself from that system? How do you manage your own trash? How do you manage your own whatever? How do you give up the internet or your smartphone, and so you don't have to be in the system? And I haven't figured it out by any stretch. I'm still clearly make my money from e-commerce and guests coming to the ranch and the restaurant on the ranch and social media. And so those are the ways that I connect with the world, and those are the ways that I make a revenue, and those keep me deeply entangled in the beast system, which is what that system is designed to do.
Indeed. However, though, your approach to farming is regenerative, so smaller scale than many of the farms across the country, and not part of that industrialized system. We've talked before on this podcast with people like Joel Salatin and others who have really kind of given the basis for what that system means. But we're really at a crisis point in agriculture in this country, and hearing more and more about farmers who are reporting losses of hundreds of dollars per acre to be able to grow the food that we eat. So let's talk about that. I think that's really important for our audience who are not farmers but eaters. I mean, it's really, really important for us to realize what's going on. Um, how bad is it for farmers these days?
We're on a full-on agrarian collapse. We've lost 170,000 farms in 8 years, and it is going to get worse before it gets better, if it gets better. We are going to have 50% of all the farmland in this entire country change hands in the next 20 years. There is no precedent for this in a non-wartime situation. And with fingers crossed that we would still be in a non-wartime situation, although we love to expand our war footprint. And obviously, at the end of an empire, turn the printers on and expand the war footprint has always been the model. But anyways, so this is going to happen. And what happens is people die, and their children do not want to have this hard life with no money. And so they sell the land, and then it becomes part of some other conglomerate. And it's no longer a farm. But the thing is that, and I just to be clear, because you said smaller scale, but there's large scale regenerative farms. Regenerative agriculture, actually, just Gabe Brown alone has brought more acreage into regenerative agriculture than all of the organic since the 70s in just the last 10 years. So regenerative agriculture, Rick Clark is someone who's doing regenerative and organic on 7,000 acres. There's plenty of large scale regenerative agriculture. And that's what I like about regenerative agriculture, is it is an off and an on ramp for these farmers. And so what we need is to, as consumers, on the consumer side, we need to prove the demand. We need to continue to buy direct from the farmer. We need to trade a little bit of our resilience. And for me, it's like if I had 6 or 7 more customers a day in my farm store and my restaurant, we could get to break even. I have a
Mm.
friend that just needs to have 10 more families a month support her farm. I have another friend, he just needs to sell, I think it's 12 more half cows every quarter of the year. So 6 cows a quarter of the year. So that's not that much if you're thinking like one family
Yeah.
buys a half cow, one family buys, we're talking about 12 families over 3 months. So it's 4 families a month to do that in an area where there's millions of people in his area, right? So these are the kind of things that you really can make a difference if you're buying directly from the farmer. And so the government's not going to save us. No policy is going to save us. It really has to be up to we, the people, that we trade our resilience for our convenience, and we decide that agrarian society is worth having and rural society is worth having. And food that comes from someone that you know is worth having.
Yeah. What do you think are the barriers for the customers in making that switch? Is it cost alone? Is it sort of seeing the usual prices of, let's say, a bag of flour is $3.50. And then if you look at the organic option, it's $12. And then that's what makes people say, no, I'm just going to keep buying what I'm used to buying. Is it cost alone, or is there something else that's holding people back?
I think that the whole environmental movement was designed to have us believe that we're a plague and a pestilence on the planet. We don't matter,
Mm,
and it would be better if we all died. And that underlying message, and people say, oh, young people are having anxiety about climate change. No, they're having anxiety because they were trained and programmed to believe that we, the humans, are the problem on the planet.
yeah.
And so if we're the problem and we're all just going to go extinct anyways, why fight for a better future? And I have this pig, her name is Braveheart, and she was meant to be processed with all of her siblings. And it was a cold day in March, and we were loading up the trailer, and she just went totally ballistic. And then my husband got more guys to help and more guys to help. She broke the gate, she broke part of the trailer. All the guys had bloody knuckles and pig poop all over them. And my husband looked at me and he said, she wants to live more than I want there to be bacon the third day of this festival you're having. So we're not going to have bacon by Sunday morning breakfast. And he shut the door to the trailer and he fed the pigs that were in there, and they went to the harvest the next morning. Now Braveheart just gave birth to her fourth litter.
Oh,
Now
wow.
there was nothing left for her to fight for. And so what I'm asking of humans that have given up kind of is, I want you to be Braveheart. I need you to take and embody Braveheart. Braveheart is in a pen wallowing in mud with her babies and her mother right now because basically she fought like hell to not die. And so
Mhm,
we as humanity actually have to fight to have the shift. And right now, we've all kind of subconsciously or consciously surrendered to some future that we don't want, but we're not actively participating in a future we do want. And I'm telling you, like, I'm actively way out here on the skinny branches, losing money, hoping that people come and join me and help me and shop in my store, et cetera, to have there be a different future for our children. And I'm 47 years old, but I have a 2-year-old. So I am not having 40-year-old kids, 30-year-old kids, like a lot of people are like, my kids. I have very young children and I want a better future for them. And so I'm asking everybody to embody Braveheart. And I do think that it's a lackadaisicalness and a belief fundamentally that we each cannot make a difference, but we all are the ripple effect. Like every
mhm.
single action, if I just need 6 customers more a day to get to break even, if you decide to drive to the farm and shop, or you go on the store online and shop, you were just 15% of the solution. That's a huge percentage of what I need.
Yeah.
And that's the same if you go and shop from my friend's farm, she only needs 10 families a month. You're 10% of the solution for the whole month. So we're not talking about these huge numbers. We don't need, they always say a very loud 11% is like that threshold. If you have a very loud 11%, it can shift the way the future is going. But
Mhm.
I need there to be a really loud 11% that wants to save farming. And that's what I'm asking people to join. That's what I'm asking for people to shop and spend their money. And another thing is, my father always says, whatever you spend your time doing and spend your money on is what you're committed to. And unfortunately, what it seems like is most of us are committed to Meta and Amazon
Yeah.
and chain restaurants. And we don't want to admit that. We don't like, but we go to Whole Foods, which is Amazon, and then we go to Amazon, then we go buy stuff on Amazon, and then we scroll on Instagram or scroll on Facebook. So, like, what we spend our time and money doing is not the future that we say we're committed to. And it's time
Mm.
to have what we say we're committed to align with what our time and our money is being dedicated to. So, I want to invite people not only to just shop at farms, help farms. Like everybody's out there white knuckling it, working a full time. I'm working two full time off farm jobs, plus trying to run the farm, plus have four children to make this all work. And so we could use all the help that we could get. And I think that we all have to join together. And I believe that the only commodity worth fighting for at this time is resilient community. Because come this weekend, let's say, and all the power goes out up here, I'm up in a high area, like hilly area, and we'll be stuck in because there's rivers that if it water rises, we'll be stuck on both sides. Now, no matter how much money people have in their bank is not going to matter this weekend. It matters their relationship with their neighbors, if they can rely on their neighbors, if their neighbors will come check on them, who's going to go check on Daryl because he's, has COPD and is end stages of life. Like someone has to go
Mhm.
check on him. He has to have resilient community. It doesn't matter if he has a lot of money in the bank if nobody's going to come check on him when we have below freezing temperatures for multiple days. That's the reality. And so I just feel like we have to start building community. And we've gotten in the last 100 years so used to having life go the way we want it to go and not having to compromise and surrender and be in community. And that is what I think we need. And so the community that is going to save farms is a mix of the people that are going to do the farming and the consumers that are going to prioritize their time and money towards those farms.
Absolutely. We had an interesting conversation recently on Collapse Life where somebody said to us, I don't like that expression self sufficiency. What we really need to be focusing on is community resilience. And I think that's kind of exactly what you're saying. No man is an island. We can't survive on our own, no matter how much prep we've done, how much is in our cellar, how much money there might be in the bank. We need to have those connections to the people around us and people who are pulling together. And I think agrarian or rural communities used to have that, and we've very quickly broken down that structure. So I think you're absolutely right. I wanted to talk a little bit more about from the farmer's perspective, because what you laid out is very clear. And we are, I mean, you mentioned it, we are in a crisis moment. We're in an agrarian collapse. So for the farmers who are working their fingers to the bone and also working off farm jobs, many of them are even choosing to leave land unplanted for this 2026 season because they can't afford to actually plant it. Um, is there time to turn this around, even if we have consumers have a shift in how they think and how they behave? Is there, are we still at a moment where things can be saved?
Depends on how quickly people choose to make this important. I mean, I talk to every guest that comes in my restaurant, every guest that comes to the farm store, and I say, like, this only works if the community supports it. And sometimes people will say, this is my favorite restaurant. And then they're like, oh my God, when did you move the farm store? Well, I moved the farm store 15 months ago. So if this is your favorite restaurant and you haven't been here in 15 months, I suspect that you're spending your time and your money at not your favorite restaurant because it's closer to your house or because it's more convenient or whatever. And so it depends on how quickly the human beings decide whether this is important to them or not. And I don't like to refer to people as consumers, but um and so I just want to say it's the people. The people get to decide. We the people are actually going to decide the fate of this, and policies are against us and all these things are against us, but are we the people going to just surrender to that, or are we going to fight like Braveheart for something different? And that's really what it comes down to. We saw during COVID that where there's a will, there's a way.
Mhm.
And as much as I don't agree with the people, it seemed like 90% of people were willing to completely change their way of life for humanity. And
Yeah.
so if 90% of people are willing to completely change their way of life for humanity at the loss of their economics, at the loss of this, at the loss of that, are we willing to change the way we buy food for humanity? And that is my question. And we know that you can alter all of society almost overnight.
Yeah.
We know we can make indoor dining illegal and showing your face illegal. And
Yeah.
people will do that for society, for humanity. So will they buy food from Shake the Hand that feeds them, buy their face cream, tallow cream from somebody that they know? Will they buy their tallow or their comfrey salve for the next time they cut themselves instead of Neosporin from the farmer? That's the question. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer. And I pray every day. And, you know, God help us to have a different outcome. We've all seen Terminator and we've all seen these dystopian futures that none of us want. And we rarely see a future that is beautiful and agrarian and
Mm.
something worth living for. And I want to say, let's live into that future together.
Right. Utopian versus dystopian.
Yes.
Um, so let's say in that utopian future, the demand side of the picture gets solved, and all of a sudden Americans hear this interview and go, "Yes, I'm all in.
This
Change.
interview. This is it. This is
This
the
is the one that's going to change things." Um, we are talking, perfect world utopia anyway. So if the demand starts to change, what needs
yes.
to change on the supply side? Can farmers who are at that industrial level make enough changes in enough time to catch up?
Yes. We have the opportunity to be like the most diverse food powerhouse in the world. I write every day for Epoch Times. One of my off-farm jobs is that I write a daily column for a big conservative newspaper called Epoch Times. Actually, they don't identify as conservative, they identify as centrist.
Hmm.
But other people describe them that way. And then I'm always like, but so I write every day there. And I just recently wrote about why don't we just hunker down? We have enough oil, we have enough food. Why don't we just like homestead it, home USA, homestead it, and diversify? And it doesn't take so much time to diversify our crops. It's that everybody is white knuckling it and everybody's stuck in this debt system, and so they can't change what they're doing because their debt will not let them. But if their neighbors start selling tomatoes and corn and peas and whatever different stuff, and they see that there's a possibility for that, then they will be willing to make those changes as well. And if your neighbor is selling out of his direct to consumer beef every single day, like my neighbor has grass fed cows that he just sends off to auction and then they go to the feedlot system. Now, if I was selling every bit of beef that I had, I'm sure that he would be like, "So, how can I get into this system where we're selling direct to consumer?"
Hmm.
And he's already been like, "So, what is regenerative? What would I have to not do to be da da da?" So people are already watching their neighbors who are making money in a different way that aren't just leveraging debt and then leveraging insurance to cover the debt. And that's like what farming is right now. And that's so sad, but we're just borrowing against the farm and the equipment. And then we're getting through the year and then we're paying back that debt and then borrowing again. And the seed companies and the input companies have everything worked out to like push the farmer to just, if they're making $100 an acre of income, we're going to make it cost $90 an acre to plant it and have inputs for it. And so it's all out of formula in order to keep the farmer poor. And so that's crazy. In case of emergency, the most important thing is going to be air, water, food in that order, guns and fuel right after that. So farmers are have the power to keep our air and our water clean. They grow our food. and they likely have plenty of guns and ammo. So they should be like the most important people in society. But they're not. And we're totally strangling them.
Yeah.
But the shift specifically in row crops can happen really quickly, and the shift in building the soil, it's not years and years and years. I purchased a farm in California before I moved to Texas, and it had less than 1% soil organic matter. It was sprayed with Roundup, and by when I left, it had 20% soil organic matter. There was no chemical residue, and I was growing massive amounts of organic produce just like coming out of the ground. It that was in 5 years. 5 years, I took something that was like this ungrowable fallow thing to this just abundance pouring out of the ground without any inputs.
Mhm.
So we're this can happen pretty fast if we give people the opportunity to do it. And
Mhm.
it would be great if there was support from the government. But the thing is that the government support is always starts with good intentions supposedly, and then the outcome is like, oh well, we thought if we gave everybody this, then this would be good, or if we thought if we paid people more money to not be married, that would be a good thing because it would be women that didn't have a husband and they needed it. And then it's like, oh, people are not getting married because they're getting more assistance. There's all these ripple effect, and we never and the thing about free market is you have to adjust. The government just puts out a policy, and then 40 years later you're like, wow, everybody's metabolically unhealthy. What happened? Oh, well, we flipped the pyramid upside down, and then we told everybody to eat grains, and
Yeah.
it's we subsidized all this food because I mean, we started subsidizing food in the beginning because like 14 or 20% of our young men were too malnutrition to join the military. And what is so crazy is that turned around, and now only 23% of our young men and women are healthy enough to join the military. And we subsidize all this corn and soy to make sure we weren't starving to death. Well, wouldn't it be better to have 20% that's starving than 77% that's obese and mentally
They're
defected to the
they're
point
just
that they can't
malnourished in the other
in the
direction
other
now.
direction. So the thing
Mhm.
is we didn't fix anything. And so the government can never really fix a problem. They just throw out a solution, and then they don't have to adjust based on the free market. And so the outcomes are always terrible. So I think that really, if it was up to me, what the government does is just freeze up Emancipation Proclamation, as Joel Salatin says. Let's just free up the food system. If you're selling inside of your state or to somebody that's within 500 miles of your house, person to person, there's no regulations. Just you go to it, do whatever you want to do. If you are selling, the farmer is selling to the person, there's no middleman,
Yeah.
then you open it up. You want to process your own birds, you want to make chicken pot pies, you want to make tomato bisque, you want to make salsa, whatever it is. I believe person to person in your own state or within a 500-mile radius, whichever you want to try to do, that's the way to go. And then anybody who doesn't feel safe with that system and they need safe spaces, doesn't exist, but you can believe it and tell each other about safe spaces. It's dangerous to be alive and be human. There's no safe spaces.
Mhm.
But those people can go to HEB. Those people can go to Ralph's. Those people can go to Riley's. Those people can go to Wegmans, wherever you are. Like there's different, I don't know where people
Right.
are, but
Yeah.
though that's an example. It's Vaughn's, whatever, the different
Right.
tops. All the different states have their different big box stores. And you buy your stuff at Kroger, and then those of us who are want to buy from our neighbors can buy from our neighbors, but let's free our neighbors to feed us. Let's free our neighbors to make charcuterie. Let's free our neighbors to milk their cows.
Mhm. It's really striking, and it brings to mind, my husband and I spent a good chunk of 2025 in rural areas in Central Texas, and, that lack of choice, what you just described, was really, really striking. When you drive through rural Texas, mostly what you see is a dollar store, Family Dollar, Dollar
Dollar
Tree,
General,
yeah.
and
That's it.
Lowe's and those Lowe's grocery
You're
stores that go
you're
to.
lucky if you see a Lowe's, and yeah, Lowe's, they're there, but what's there is not that different on the shelf than what you'll find in the dollar store. It's a lot of packaged goods, very little around the outside of the supermarket in terms of fresh produce or meat. It's not local, and it's expensive in these small places. So even though you're driving through areas that look like farming areas or ranching areas, there are no farm gate stands where you can just stop off and buy um, tomatoes from someone or beef from
In
someone. It's
Bandera,
very
Texas, there is.
it's great, and you're part of hopefully a growing movement, but it's for the average person who's just kind of just trying to get by in their day-to-day life and do their job or their many jobs to get by, it's not it takes a whole different way of thinking, doesn't it? And one of the things that Joel Salatin has said to us on this show is we need to get people back in the kitchen and cooking again because people are not doing that. It's not part of our um, food culture anymore to cook a
It's
meal every day.
it is crazy, but this is the thing about I was shocked, I'm gonna say. I grew up in upstate New York. Ithaca is, like, super liberal, but super health conscious and had a co-op. I remember the co-op when I was, like, a little tiny kid. My aunt worked at the co-op, so we've always had a natural food co-op. We've always had, you know, that kind of culture in Ithaca, New York, where I grew up, and then I moved to Los Angeles, which obviously is like the mecca of how to be healthy through food and wellness. I was shocked when I moved to Central Texas of how unhealthy people look. I was literally like, "Is
Mm.
there something in the water poisoning everybody? Why does everybody look so unhealthy?" I was like, I'd go to Walmart or to somewhere, go to HEB, and I'd be saying to my husband, like, to use I don't understand what in the what is going on here.
Mhm.
But I literally think it's lack of options because HEB may have a small organic section and da 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 da. Your everyday life to there's like your people are eating normally from a restaurant and a gas station that's supplied by Cisco, and it's all just kind of the same food sprayed with Roundup that is just incredibly void of nutrients and
Mhm.
incredibly efficient at killing the microbiome in your gut and giving you this industrial microbiome.
And seed
People
oils.
and I don't look particularly good for my age, and in Los Angeles certainly didn't look particularly good for my age, I don't think. And but here, people are always like, "You're 47?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You're still breastfeeding?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just had a baby at 45." I don't know. But there is a distinct difference between people that have lived in this part of Central Texas for their whole life and that are 47 and me. And I think that it has to do with the opportunity to get really nutrient dense food and to
Mhm.
support their microbiome and their immune system in
Yeah.
such a way that has the vitality staying in their body. And I was surprised about that because, yeah, I lived in upstate New York and then I lived in California where food and health and wellness and herbal medicine and all of these things were incredibly important. And
Yeah.
here it's a little bit still coming up. I had never seen an adult drinking a big gulp, like maybe a Mexican Coke as like a treat, but I had never seen but adults just drink big gulps in as regular course of life
Mhm.
here in Central Texas. People walk out of my restaurant because we don't have soda. They're like, "Okay, we're gonna go somewhere else." And I'm like, "Okay,
Wow. Yeah. So
sorry."
there are some big changes that need to happen across the board. Um, would you say that farmers are kind of the canaries in the economic coal mine? Are there things that farmers are experiencing now that the rest of society will start to feel soon?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody who's screaming for socialism, our food system is socialized and subsidized by and free labor and uh, it, the more we push for a system that supports all of us, we have a system that supports none of us. And that is for sure a canary in the coal mine. It is for sure this thing where the more we want to have a system that's going to take care of everybody, and the thing that's the closest to nature is true capitalism, not crony capitalism, not this oligarchy government capitalism. They're too big to fail, gross relationships. But a coffee shop starting up in a under developed neighborhood and it becoming a place and everybody meets up there and people go and work on their computers there and everybody supports it, and then the owners are able to open a second coffee shop, and then they're able to buy coffee from some farmer in Mexico, and then this roaster in Vegas is able to use their new high-tech roasting equipment and beat the other price. And that is what nature does. Nature says this is supporting the community, and so it is supported. This is bad for the community. We're going to take it out. That's nature. And see, so if we could get back to something closer to true capitalism, which is nature, instead of begging for socialism, which does not exist in nature. I talk about this in my book. There is no socialism in nature. And we have to figure out a way to get away from that, because as any system where we're trying to create equity and we're trying to create that everybody is even in how much they get, I believe in us that we need a system that gives everybody the same opportunity to thrive. But
Correct.
the truth is, not everybody wants the same responsibility. Not everybody want the responsibility in which I carry every day is a lot. And many people don't want it, including my husband. Like, people are like, you have a non-traditional marriage because there's a lot of things you're leading in. Yeah, my husband doesn't want to lead. He doesn't want the level of stress. I feel led by God to do this thing, so I'm doing it. But this idea that we can't say everybody should have a farm, because not everybody wants the responsibility and the of what it takes to do that. And
Right.
this idea that everybody should get exactly the same outcome is not possible. And what is a perfect outcome for one person may be a non-starter for another person. So what we want is a life where everybody has an opportunity to do whatever. And then it needs to be on merits and effort and
Right.
work that was put in. And
And
that
outcomes will vary, and
and
that's
outcomes
okay.
will vary, and that is okay. My husband always talks about this. He's one of 8 children that grew up in a shack in Mexico, 3 walls and a thatched roof, and no car, no road to the outside world, indigenous, fully indigenous, like, village, indigenous language. Spanish was the second language in the village. The first language, was Zapotec or Chantel, Zapotec. And so, but each, even villages close by, they speak a different language and all of that. So this was the life my husband grew up in. And what are the chances that he marries me, has 4 children in America, lives in Central Texas, running this big ranch? Pretty low. And does that mean that all of his brothers and sisters would want that? Like, his sister has an awesome life and 4 children and owns a restaurant in Mexico, and she's doing her thing. And the other, she got another brother is working with his fiance's family growing coffee, and they're doing their thing. One brother is dead. He was murdered. Another brother is struggling, and we bought him a little motorped like thing that's a cab, and now he's like so grateful because he can work from the village, and he
Mhm.
is a cab driver. He drives, it's like a two-seater in the back, and changed his whole life, and he doesn't have to drive to the oil fields and work in the oil fields anymore. And that's his life. Nobody, it's not like everybody should have married a lady in America and run a farm because
Right.
all 8 of them started in the same place. They
Right.
all are at wherever they are wanting to be based on effort, energy, and life commitments. And
Mhm.
that's perfect. That's okay. This idea that we all need to have the same outcomes, the same diet, the same amount of food, the same amount of money in our bank account doesn't make sense, because the
Mhm.
effort it takes to become a neurosurgeon is different than the effort it takes to become a barista. And there's nothing wrong with either of those choices. It's just different mindsets. I have one kid that's so into natural fish tanks and he's always collecting a leaf from outside to get the microbiology. He gets a leaf from the stream and then he puts it in so the microbiology, but he doesn't want it in too long because he doesn't want the water to get colored from the leaf. And he goes and gets sand and a rock from here and to get the microbiology, and he has soil and then a sand cap, and then he's like, oh, I need 3 more Amano shrimp because they're not eating enough for the algae. And that he is super into that.
Mhm.
My other kids are like, "What's that fishy's name?" Like, that's their engagement
Yeah.
with the tank, right? And so that's okay. He's gonna be really interested. He doesn't like to sweat. He doesn't like to work hard, and I guarantee you he will find a way to make money where he doesn't sweat, he doesn't work hard. And much to the chagrin of my husband, because my husband only respects that kind of work, you know? So I think we have to just recognize we're not all gonna come out the same,
Of
and
course,
that
yeah.
we're all going to be different. And that is the beauty of us. And we can't manage the outcome. So I believe that the canary in the coal mine, to take it back to your question, I digressed so far, sorry, is that the more we try to socialize anything, the more we will destroy its beauty. And the
Mm,
more we try to subsidize things, the more we will destroy its resilience. And so farming has been so subsidized and so socialized that we're destroying it. And we should take that as a canary in the coal mine. And will that spread to other things? And then the dollar is on free fall, full on collapse.
mhm.
And we live in a world where we basically only recognize the restraints of how many dollars we have in the bank. So silver right now is teaching us that the earth has restraints, and we cannot just buy whatever because we want it. And I don't know when this comes out, but as of this second or third week in January, I know people that work for solar companies that are authorized to pay up to $250 an ounce for silver and
Wow.
cannot take delivery. There is no silver to get. And I know that Comex or whatever is saying it's 90 something dollars an ounce, even though, and India's trading at almost $140 an ounce, and China's trading at over $100 an ounce. So the truth is, our dollars can tell us whatever we want, but the earth is showing that there is real constraints to what's possible. And the
Mhm.
dollars in the bank have little to do with those constraints. And so I think that farming and silver are starting to show us that there is constraints, that there will be ecological collapse, there will be economic collapse if we don't recognize what it really means to steward the earth and what it really means to have dominion, not to dominate. And that we have not stepped into our role as the keystone species in the last 100 years, and it's time to get back there.
Wow. I think we've given people a lot of food for thought, pun intended, and I think it's probably a really good place to end for now, although I would love to continue, to have these conversations with you periodically if you have the time for it.
I would love
Before
to do that. Have me back anytime.
that would be great. Thank you so much, Molly. Remind people about all the things that you're doing and how they can find you and support you.
So I have Sovereignty Ranch. You can go to sovereigntyranch.com. We have a retreat center. We have a conference room that supports up to 200 and something people. We have 40 beds of hospitality on the ranch. We have a restaurant on the ranch. And then we have a pretty extensive farm store where I sell all types of apothecary herb stuff that I create and make from scratch. And then we sell sourdough bread and corn tortillas that are made with our own corn, and all types of things like that as well. So you're welcome to go online or come in person. And when you're in person, we also sell meat. We're not doing meat uh, over the mail right now. We may go back. We stopped during Christmas time because we were refunding so many people's stuff because it was getting messed up with all the shipping with Christmas. But and then if you want to just find me to find out what I'm talking about, I'm Talk to Molly on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, X, and I'm most active on Instagram because I don't know, I'm better at that.
Mhm.
But you can find me all those places. And I have a Substack, And I write every day in the Epoch Times in the opinion section. So you can find me there if you have a subscription. And you can get my book on Amazon or at debunkedbynature.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Mollie, and for all the clarity that you have brought to these issues.
Thank you for putting it out there in the world and being the ripple effect and being committed to people knowing the truth.
Thank you so much, and God bless you.
God bless you.
Folks, if there's one takeaway from today, it's that resilience begins with seeing the world as it is and not as we wish it to be. So, thank you all so much for spending this time with us. If this conversation was useful to you, please be sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. You can find out more about us at collapselife.com. If you're inclined to show us some love, just look for the donate link at the top of the homepage. And thank you in advance for all your support. We hope to see you again next week. Until then, just keep your chin up. It's only collapse. See you soon.